The police, some blaring lights, show up, big batons, in dark blue uniforms, with a wish to take a life. A black man's blood smeared across the pavement, a common dream to live in a world rife with nothing to give. For a man with a complexion closest to God's animus, a reflection of his image, an angel weeps. Bourgeois colonial entity looks over us all, changing how you look at ourselves, how you look at others. Do you think this is fair in a world where everything can be made with no cost to us? But a cost has been made, to cost us of a collective humanity. And in our own melancholy drivel, we sit there and ponder, feeling in ourselves a sense of alienation, a disconnect from our own will to be human. This video is an analysis of the works of Franz Fanon, in conjunction with what we know of the modern U.S. police state, diving into how the U.S. police force exists as a mechanism of colonialism. Situated in a system of forced dependency, gagged and bound to invisible chains that we pretend to not be aware of, enforced by police who terrorize the colonized, in vicious cycles of systemic violence. A system that even situates the colonized toward an eternal theater of strife and perpetuating a ritual of violence within our communities. The phrase, quote-unquote, history moves in spirals, comes to mind when reading Jean-Paul Sartre's preface of Fanon's magnum opus. What we see here is Sartre naming random occurrences that he's seen while studying colonial history, even though that's an aspect, but is instead going from the specific to the general, and describing the material forces that work in conjunction with each other, that move history forward. The colonized live within a dialectic. Like, look at this. Sartre states in The Wretched of the Earth by Franz Fanon, quote-unquote, she has created a native bourgeoisie, sham from beginning to end. Elsewhere, she has played a double game. The colony is planted with settlers and exploited at the same time. Unquote. Sartre describes a repeating cycle that is inherent to the colonial process, in an almost nihilistic way, in a way that seems almost foreboding, but it is. The colonized are trapped within a state of extraction, subsequently a permanent state of dehumanization. Now some stuff on blackness as a subject. Within blackness or black being, there's a lack of ontology. Ontology referring to, in layman's terms, the intrinsic humanity of the subject. As we can see, humans are social creatures. We can operate under complex socio-political structures that can go on for centuries. We can see during slavery the colonization of Turtle Island, of Africa, the oppression of Dalits in India, the oppression of marginalized genders everywhere, of the Tamils in Sri Lanka, that this ontology can be snatched from us at any time. That at any time, a separation between subject and intrinsic being can be undergone at any time. The relationship between blackness and nothingness is fascinating, actually. Can we define quote-unquote blackness? What is a black worldview? An excerpt from Black Skins, White Masks by Franz Fanon describes as ontological drama, well, or lack thereof, perfectly. You know what I'm saying? I stole that little one-liner from The Case of Blackness by Fred Morton, but that shit was hard. You know what I'm saying? Well, lack thereof. You know what I'm saying? So I had to steal that. As long as the black man is among his own, he will have no occasion, except in minor internal conflicts, to experience his being through others. There is, of course, the moment of being for others, of which Hegel speaks. But every ontology is made unattainable in a colonized and civilized society. In the Weltschattung of colonized people, there is an impurity, a flaw, that outlaws any ontological explanation. Well, Weltanschauung means worldview in German. And you know, like, I don't know how to describe it, but like Marxists and shit, like, them niggas use German words the same way anime niggas use Japanese words, bro. That shit is funny, bro. Someone may object that this is the case with every individual, but such an objection merely conceals a basic problem. Ontology. Once it is finally admitted as leaving existence by the wayside, it does not permit us to understand the being of the black man. For not only must the black man be black, he must be black in relation to the white man. Some critics will take it upon themselves to remind us that the proposition has a converse. I say that this is false. The black man has no ontological resistance in the eyes of the white man. Unquote. Blackness, as Fanon writes it, is sealed into thingness. Now, I could get into the whole thing about Soviet psychology, but what Fanon is referring to here is called the subject-object distinction. Under normal circumstances, people are subjects themselves, and in this framework, they are seeing the world as objects. They realize themselves through this interaction of the subject-object, relation, which is done through practice. What Fanon is saying is black/colonized people aren't actually allowed to be subjects. We can only be objects, and therefore we are sealed into thingness. Now let's get into the history of policing. Policing within the US actually started in the 16,000s based on the England model. In this time period, policing was modeled as a night watch. This informal system of policing is more communal and decentralized. In the southern colonies, the system developed differently. A less industrialized South, whose main imports were slaves, their main tool for developing mass swaths of underdeveloped land being slavery. The North and South had separate material conditions. Policing in the US developed initially in a parallel fashion, but diverging to match the needs of the slave states in the South. In the 1768 South Carolina law, this allowed slave owners to apprehend, chastise, and bring back any slave found off their plantation. All slave states had distinct slave codes to dictate what could be done to restrict the autonomy of slaves and regulate slavery. Subsequently, in the urban South, interestingly enough, policing still followed this night watch model because settlers were the majority in these areas. But in the rural South, the situation was reversed. Please let me explain why and how this relates to the colonial subject. The first formal slave patrol was created in the Carolina colonies in 1704. Militia captains were to select 10 men from the companies to form special patrols. Quote-unquote, muster all men under his command, and with them ride from plantation to plantation, and into any plantation within the limits or precincts, as the general shall think fit. Take up all slaves, which they shall meet without their master's plantation, which have not a permanent or ticket from their masters. From the Statutes at Large of South Carolina, Volume 2, page 255. So basically what this means, any black person that was walking around, they got these, institutional, KKK divisions, and they're like, hey, if you're black, you got to have some random white men give you papers. So that's just what the country was doing. They were given extensive privileges to search and detain, and administer up to 20 lashes to any runaway slave. As Fred Morton writes, in the case of blackness, quote-unquote, one way to investigate the lived experience of the black is to consider what it is to be the dangerous. Because we are the constituent supplement. What it is to be irreducibly disordering, deformational force, while at the same time being absolutely indispensable to the normative form. Unquote. So nobody likes white people. But the South Carolina Act of 1740 exempted any townships from patrol requirement. Oh wait, listen to this. Where the white inhabitants were in far superior numbers to the blacks. The police signify the quote-unquote unruly. Colonized subjects lack control or humanity. They must be subjugated, so they must form into a tool to oppress the wretched of the earth. Pramod K. Nair says in Toward a Post-Colonial Humanism, colonialism negates the black ontology, excluded from the South other dialectic primary to identity formation. As Fanon puts it, quote-unquote crushing objecthood. This same mentality is shown within the acts of the police to this day. NYC is home to one of the most militarized police forces in the world. The mentality of the slave patrol fits one-to-one. In the 2016 dataset, I would use more up-to-date information, but the NYPD has a tight lock on this. Obviously, you would have thought fascist niggas don't like when people know what the fuck they're doing. Done by Alex Bell. Also, P.S. I'm at a state O with these statistics, so, focus up. No bullshit. Focus up, my nigga. Niggas gonna act like this algebra. Come on, bro. So look, only 58% of NYPD officers live in New York City, with 26% of NYPD officers living in Long Island, 17% of NYPD officers living in Queens, 16% of NYPD officers living in Brooklyn, 13% of NYPD officers living in approved upstate NY counties. 11% of NYPD officers live in the Bronx. 10% of NYPD officers live in Staten Island. And 4% of NYPD officers live in Manhattan. Now, this information not too alarming to the skeptic, you know what I'm saying? But let's see what this information means in context. The location of police officers and where they live. When you look at the data on the surface, only about 42% of officers live outside of NYC, but it's more accurate that around 78% of officers live outside of the neighborhoods that actually police. The areas in NYC with the highest reported crimes are Brooklyn and the Bronx. In Brooklyn, the most crime-riddled areas are Crown Heights, Brownsville, Bedford-Stuyvesant, East New York, East Flatbush, and Ocean Hill. And in the Bronx, I'm saying the most dangerous areas, you got Mott Haven, Tremont, Fordham, and Hunts Point. All of these neighborhoods being majority Black and Hispanic, and the poorest neighborhoods in the city, living below the poverty line. And the funny part is, according to a 2014 piece from 538, 77% of Black New York police and 76% of Hispanic police live in the city. Which points to the idea that these mostly white officers travel from these areas that they have no familiarity with to oppress poor and working class Black people. It's almost as if policing in the city only exists for the colonized and racialized. You know what I'm saying? When you look into the history of police as a force in the colonial territory of the US, and its modern day effects and duties, it has no bearing or job on reducing crime, with most of their work being to this objective, as police don't ever reduce crime. So the question then becomes, what is their purpose? Anyway, you know what I'm saying? End of that video. Peace out, family, and free the land. No cap. You know what I'm saying? Hope y'all niggas doing okay. No cap.